Hi, Ronald the Rules Lawyer here. I have been given the privilege of doing an exclusive preview of the upcoming Dark Archives book that Paizo will start releasing to subscribers July 11th, but will be releasing with Gen Con to the general public. The Dark Archives book includes two brand new classes, the Psychic and Investigator, and you should subscribe to me and ring the bell if you want to see my detailed deep dives on those, which will come out next week. And I'm going to give a brief overview of the book, very brief, and then deep dive into, well, kind of deep dive, preview the section that I've been given, which is Curses and Pacts. So when we look at the table of contents, you'll see that in my video on Book of the Dead, where I talk about how they have been going more in character in the books that provide new player options, they are doubling down on this here, and I really like the conceit of this book. It's in the Pathfinder Society, the adventurers organization in Galarian, a faction was removed called the Dark Archive, I believe, and this is this book. It consists of files that were secreted away by one member of that faction, and they are written as such. And you can see in the titles of the sections that it is. Something that's interesting, too, that they're doing is providing little adventure vignettes that can be run starting at the low levels up through level 12. And I think this is an interesting choice. I think it gives an opportunity. It's a nice seed for inspiration for GMs to see the concepts of that case file in action, and also gives an opportunity to use the rules, if a player or a group wants to do a one-shot, to use the rules given in that section, or the themes given in that section in a short adventure. One thing that I think this book does is return some of the magic to magic. I think it does so quite well. And what I mean by that is, okay, to start from another place, 5th edition D&D, one of the things it wanted to do was make magic items feel more special. And so there are no guidelines or expectations for how many magic items a character is to have. And this is a reaction to the phenomenon in 3rd and 4th editions of D&D, in which magic items were kind of an essential part of advancing your character, their own level up tracks, so to speak, in which some of them would give you flat math modifiers to improve your ability scores, and this bare utilitarian presentation of magic items 5e wanted to reject. And so you find a lot of the items don't give flat bonuses, but give unique abilities. And also they are not purchasable. There's no magic mart for them. Pathfinder 2nd edition does not quite go that far. There are still expectations of magic items that you get as you level up. There is a optional rule called automatic bonus progression, where you don't necessarily need to follow the treadmill of magic items in your base that improve your base stats, but they are there. And what Pathfinder 2e does is it does give them unique abilities. Pretty much every item, magic item that's not simply a weapon or armor, some unique ability that you can use possibly once per day to make it alive, to remind you that it's there and it's not simply just something you wear, not the Christmas tree effect. Okay, all of this is background for this book. I really like how the write-ups for everything in the section that I read about curses and pacts, they feel like what you would read in the 1978 Dungeon Master's Guide by Gary Gygax, things that have consequential effects that are not reducible to a number, and really are seeds for stories and memorable memories from a campaign. The Curses and Pacts section is 14 pages, but it's really packed, and that's even after giving 3 pages of what is arguably lore and fluff, which cover just the basics of what curses are. And I really like this metaphor that it uses in the first paragraph. I will read it out. Curses embed themselves in a victim's very souls, feeding on the energies within to ruin their lives. Whereas a typical spell is akin to a wooden club, powerful, painful, but brief, a curse is more like a splinter, smaller and subtler, but hard to remove and capable of turning the limb gangrenous and foul if left unaddressed. And I think that's great inspiration for GMs and for players to get a sense of what they are in the fiction. And it then follows it up with various categories of curses, spell curses, cursed objects, pacts, tomb curses and temple curses, familial curses, contagious curses, and oracular curses, and talks about those within the lore. And then it has several very famous curses that it goes into detail, including a painting that someone made for a royal family in which there were ghostly blurs in place of the faces in the portrait. And suddenly, a member of the family disappears, and their anguished face appears in this painting. And more members of the family meet the same mysterious fate. And the painter of the painting is then buried alive. And we even have the name of the monarch that did this. Very, very evocative. The first crunch we get is a new patron, a rare patron for witches. And this is the Pacts patron, a patron that deals with bargains. And the defining cantrip that you get is called Pact Broker, where in combat or anywhere you can offer peace to an individual. And if they do something hostile to you or one of your allies, they must make a will save or get a significant penalty to their attack and damage rolls. And if they accept your offer and then break it, those penalties are worse. So it's interesting in that, on the one hand, it's a way to debuff your enemies, but also might cause some combats to not begin altogether or to end, depending on the choice by the target. A higher level focus spell lets you, as a reaction, award an ally who gives you a beneficial effect in combat with temporary hit points. And the next focus spell, higher level, is interesting, called Over the Coals, in which you make a demand on an individual to do something for you or give you a certain amount of money. And if they fail to do so, they must make a will save or take damage, as well as possibly become drained 2 and doomed 1 on a critical failure. So it's a more tyrannical version of the cantrip in which you make a demand. Next, we have cursed items, and these are the typical D&D item that you see in a game like this is something that looks like something beneficial, like maybe it's a bag of holding, but it turns into something that when you use it under that false belief, it does something terrible. It's a bag of devouring. These don't quite do that, and instead they are interesting seeds for stories and possible side quests. So I want to give 3 examples here. There actually are 9 of them, but they were really cool, and I thought will pique interest. First is, well, I'm not going to give much description to them so that they're a surprise to players when they encounter them, but one allows you to resurrect somebody, but the problem is that once they come back to life, they blame the person who resurrected them for their death, and nothing will convince them otherwise. This also extends to those who aided in the resurrection, and the resurrected person thinks that they were brought back in service of some scheme. So you can see this can lead to some interesting shenanigans and stories at the table. Next is the item that, once triggered, makes you believe you are able to understand and speak all spoken languages. And the problem, though, is that whenever you try to translate something, it will always spark confusion or anger in the whoever is hearing the translation, and all of your efforts to clarify your error will only compound it. So this looks like a lot of fun at a table. The next item is something that makes somebody have good fortune when they give donations to others. However, they are compelled to do so in a completely condescending way, and that will offend the person, such as if someone loses their child, you flip a coin at them and say, buy a new one, and that looks like a lot of fun. Next, we have what are called tempting curses. The core rulebook has a number of curses that give you some bad effect. that you can remove with a remove curse effect. These have an additional rider. You can actually get an alternate effect from the curse as a free action, and which has potential benefits, but and additionally, in the next day, you have a saving throw to try to lift the curse. On the other hand, every time you trigger this version, it's called the Tempted Curse. The tempted version of the curse, you have the DC to resist the curse, and to remove it also increases by 1 permanently. So 2 fun examples were, one, it's a curse on people who lie and deceive. This makes it significantly harder for you to tell a lie. However, you can choose to have the tempted version, in which you are going through an extended confession of all your sins from childhood to the present day, which goes on, never ends, and it doesn't end until you're finished, or 10 minutes have elapsed, whichever comes first. And every creature who is within 30 feet must do a will save or be fascinated by you. And it was really funny to me. And the weight of your guilt is lifted temporarily, and for the rest of that day, you have a smaller penalty to your checks to lie. Because what happens is the curse makes you envision all of the effects of your lies in the past while you're lying. The next curse is hilarious. It's called Enforced Hospitality. It's cast upon the rude and inconsiderate. This forces you, if you fail your save against it, to greet every group with a warm, genuine greeting using 1 action, even if they're completely hostile to you. And if you don't, you are slowed 1 for 1 minute. The tempted version of it means that you are forced to greet every individual with 1 action to avoid the slowed condition. But on the other hand, you have the benefit of the Sanctuary spell, so creatures cannot attack you without making a saving throw for 1 minute. So that's an interesting trade-off and really funny imagining at the table. Next are bargained contracts, which are treated like magic items. They give you a benefit. However, the other entity that bargained with you to get this contract with you can at any time, maybe once per day for each one, I believe, invoke their side of the contract, and each contract has its own unique effects. One of them is called Key to the Stomach and has artwork, and I'll just say the name there, and you can speculate as to what it does. One that I'll go into more is called Hand-Hued Face, which is very interesting and can lead to a lot of possibilities in a campaign. Basically, your face becomes moldable like clay, and you lose your old appearance, but you look like a generic member of your ancestry, whether that's human or elf or something or other. And the other entity you bargained with, you also have the ability to make your face, to mold it to look like somebody else. And you don't get a penalty to impersonate them on the basis of differences in your face. So you can look exactly like them. And you additionally have the opportunity to take 2 actions only to remove this appearance and look like your new generic appearance. So meanwhile, the entity you bargained with can, once per day, if you're using your face to impersonate somebody, assume that appearance instead, your impersonation appearance, and you go back to your generic version, and you become stunned 3 immediately from the backlash. If you are looking like, and the other entity could alternatively try to assume your previous face from before you got this bargain contract with the same effect. So you can see that there can be a lot of interesting scenarios. Okay, the first of the 2 archetypes is the Pactbinder. So this is someone who, with the dedication feat, is able to make a binding vow, and everybody who hears you where you're making a promise, and everybody who witnesses this intrinsically knows you are bound by it. And it also, well, which is good to have in itself, but it also gives you a bonus to try to make requests and coerce others when you are pursuing fulfilling your vow. There are 6 more feats within the archetype. These are all interesting in that, well, one, a number of them consists of more of specific pacts you make with entities, and it's implied here that the GM and the player can come up with a lot of their own, using these for inspiration. One is the Pact of Fey Glamour, where you make a promise to Fey creatures to always accept any Fey's request for hospitality, including giving them food, drink, and lodging for up to 3 days. Nicely specific. And you also promise not to harm any creature to whom you've offered a hospitality or has offered you hospitality. In exchange for all that, you're able to change your base appearance to that of any other appearance as you wish within your ancestry. And this cannot be counteracted in any way so long as you follow the pact. And you can also do illusory disguise once per hour. The Pact of Draconic Fury gives you a breath weapon in exchange for getting items for a dragon that you make this bargain with upon request. And these and it will compensate you for the things you get for it. This will need some discussing with your GM to make sure it's not too intrusive, disruptive for your campaign. The Pact of Infernal Prowess, I don't know why anyone would take it in real life, but in exchange for not critically failing on a check once per day, you get to re-roll it and accept the later result as a fortune effect, and also automatically succeeding on checks to earn income if it's lower than your level. You give your soul to hell. When you die, you are permanently in hell. And as an effect of that, well, for RPG purposes at the table, it's a mechanical effect, is that you cannot be returned to life except by a miracle spell. And the devils that you've bargained with can track you for if you take your soul back. And well, anyway, that was if you really want to make a lot of money. And also, it cannot be denied, though, that that is a great effect to be able to reroll a critical failure once per day at the small price of your soul. Then the Pact of the Final Breath is a pact with psychopomps to double your natural lifespan. So your death from old age is delayed to twice your life, which does not come up much in games. The other benefit, though, is that once per day, the first time you would be reduced to 0 hit points, you instead gain double your level in hit points starting from 0. And you get fast healing for 3 rounds equal to your level. And the language suggests your wounded value does not go up. So that is really good. And in exchange, you swear to treat the dead you encounter with respect and perform last rites if they're to make sure their spirits rest in peace and are less likely to rise as undead. And you also swear to destroy undead that you encounter within reason, not at not at inordinate risk to yourself. And if at any point you break the pact and you are past your natural lifespan, you get a few moments by the psychopomps to say final farewells, which is a nice little flavor added to that. The last one is the Pact of Eldritch Eyes, in which you bargain with some otherworldly entity so that you can cast Prying Eye once per hour. It's that invisible floating sensor spell. And you, in exchange, let them peer into your world. So occasionally during the day, you might be suddenly struck with visions as they intrude upon your reality. You might have nightmares. It means that you might be distracted when a combat begins and have a penalty to your initiative. Also, every time you wake up every morning, you get a random lore skill, which is really interesting. One thing that's unclear to me is how often, which of these you can retrain, which of these pacts, because there's one pact that says it cannot be retrained, and there's another pact that says you can freely retrain it. So what the default state is not clear to me, but I suppose GMs are, what that means is that it's up to you and your GM, and these specifications give direction for those specific pacts. The second and last archetype we get is the Cursed Maelstrom. So imagine somebody is cursed and they are somehow, well, unfortunate events always befall them, but that character is somehow able to harness it. That's the Cursed Maelstrom. And to get this dedication, you need to have been subjected to a curse, either currently or previously. And what you get is access to this, what it's called the Cursed Maelstrom state. To get this archetype, you need to have previously or currently be cursed in order to take it. And this gives you access to the Cursed Maelstrom state, in which you get to basically, within a 10-foot radius around yourself, give a -1 status penalty to all creatures, saving throws, and skill checks. And it can also be a basis for later abilities that you'll get with other feats. But to enter this state, you need to succeed on a roll and then voluntarily re-roll it again and take the second result. Alternatively, you can be subjected to a misfortune effect, or you fail, you are exposed to and get the effect of a curse. And this only works in an encounter, and it ends at the end of an encounter, and once your state ends, you cannot enter it again for another minute. And also, while you're in the state, you cannot benefit from fortune effects. Now, why would you want to do all this? To give that penalty in that radius around you, but also, as one action, you can expel the Maelstrom and end the state, but you get to give penalties, give a curse to a foe within 60 feet, where they get that -1 or -2 penalty to their skill checks and saves. And if they critically fail, they additionally must roll twice and keep the worst result on one of those checks. So as you can see, you are harnessing and using your curse and applying it to others. And people, including your allies, don't want to be near you when this happens. So the other feats that you get, Familiar Oddities gives you a +2 bonus in knowing the properties of a cursed item. And you may recall that if an item is cursed, you need to exceed the DC to identify it by 10 to know that it is cursed. So this is helpful also with that. Then Unnerving Expansion lets you spend an action to increase the radius of your Maelstrom by 5 feet, and you additionally can, for free, try to demoralize a creature within your new radius. Share Burden lets you, as a reaction, direct a misfortune effect or curse that would affect your ally to yourself, and that also has the benefit of possibly triggering your Maelstrom state. Accursed Magic lets you gives you curse spells, specific spells that you can use once per day each, and at 8th level, you get Claim Curse, which lets you claim someone else's curse for 5 minutes. It doesn't affect them for that duration and affects you. Seal Fate is a cool debuff, which makes a creature have weakness to a certain kind of damage. And additionally, if they fail their save, if they are reduced to 0 hit points as a result of that damage, they die if they are low level enough. And then Inevitable Disaster lets you predict something very unfortunate happening to a creature, and they are subjected to it in 1 to 4 rounds, no matter what, even if they are then in another plane of existence. It usually is physical damage, but there is room for the GM to allow otherwise. The next feat is Counter Curse. This is kind of like Counter Song by a bard, and when an ally within 30 feet is targeted by a curse or misfortune effect, you have the opportunity of, and you're in your Maelstrom state, you have an opportunity to counteract that and negate it. If it's a constant effect, you get to suppress it for a round. I'll mention then that there's an upgraded version called Reverse Curse. If you succeed in that counteract check, the original source that created the curse or misfortune effect is now subjected to their own effect, and they get to save against it, but it uses their own DC. Then Torrential Backlash is the offensive. Unleash your curse. Once you're in your Maelstrom state, you get to unleash your curse, and it harms everybody within the current radius of it and does 1d6 negative damage times your level. Lastly, we end the Curses and Pacts section with the case file. This is the mini adventure. And I won't say anything. I can't spoil it. And I'll just say that imagine a lighthearted, humorous fairy tale. And this is, when I was reading through it, I was chuckling. There's a lot of opportunity for improvisation by the GM and maybe even the players to create a lot of funny situations. That's all I'll say about it. So that's my exclusive preview of the Curses and Pacts section of the upcoming Dark Archive. Make sure to order it. It looks like an excellent book. The two classes look like a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to doing my preview of those next week. And like and subscribe if you want to get and ring the bell if you want to get notified about those coming out. Lastly, please support my Patreon. I don't have an income except for the paid GMing that I do and the Patreon. And so for me to be able to continue to create content, I need your support. So do that, and also join my Discord community where people have been doing pickup Pathfinder 2e games. And also check out my side channel, the Rules Lawyer Discord community channel, in which my long plays are posted. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.